will be done before Christmas. We're just doing it because we're going to run out of puff otherwise. Okay. Right. No declarations of interest today, so we'll move on to public forums. Firstly, I'd like to welcome Bradley Nicholson, who will speak about engaging with the council regarding rates remissions for the Oxford Terrace Baptist Church.
Kia ora, everyone. Obviously, 5 minutes isn't a great amount of time, so I'll try and be clear and concise. I'm Bradley, and among other things, I've had the privilege of, over the last 10 years, of managing Oxford Terrace Baptist Church's post-earthquake rebuild. I'd like to start by saying that I love Christchurch, having lived here briefly as a child, and since just prior to the 2011 earthquakes. Our city is a fantastic place to live, and I think it's the best place in the world to live. One of the major reasons why I believe that is because post the earthquake, individuals, businesses and churches like Oxford Terrace have been able to find new creative expressions of what it means to be in our city. A little bit of background of Oxford Terrace, and I've provided a two-paged summary that's been circulated. We lost everything in the earthquakes. We settled on a vision of people, location and renewal, and our expression of church through our buildings would be that of a modern day monastery where people were living, working and worshipping, and all of those things were bumping into one another. We finished the latest edition of that, which was opened by our mayor Phil in early 2023, and I'd like to thank this council for approving a grant towards the housing part of that. Post that completion, we received a letter that our site had been reclassified, and we were expecting to pay rates on our housing. What we weren't expecting was the reclassification of 25% of our site to be considered business use. And in that reclassification, I've detailed in the summary the 12-month journey of that. We were asked initially to make an application, which we made, and after 6 weeks we were told that the individual organisations would need to apply separately. It then took 7 months for that application to be processed, and multiple calls with our council representative Jake eventually landed in a decision which wasn't favourable to us. The two organisations in question and amongst our site is Vision West Community Housing Trust and Workplace Support that have been declined rating remissions. The three questions which I would pose is fair, reasonable, and the implications of the policy. From the council's policy, the objective of the remission is to provide rates relief to Christchurch community-based organisations to support the benefit they provide to the well-being of the Christchurch district. Remission applies to any community-based not-for-profit organisation whose activities, in the opinion of the council, provide significant public good as a result of its occupation of the property. Workplace Support is an organisation that supports people at some of their most vulnerable times in their life and supports them to maintain employment and through employment. Vision West Community Housing Support Trust supports housing the homeless, housing vulnerable people, and sustaining tenancies, among many other activities. I think, and we think, that both of these provide significant public good as a result of their occupation of our property. However, the remissions have decided otherwise, and the reasons given to us is because they receive income from businesses and the government. I guess the irony that I see in that is that the government only provides funding to public goods. So to then be told that you're not providing a public good because you're receiving public funding seems a bit ironic to us. In our opinion, the application of this policy hasn't been fair, and we're not sure what other organisations are or aren't receiving this. And there's two parts to that. Firstly, We would say that our expression, everything on our site is an expression of the church, and we don't think that the 7-month process to do that was reasonable. And finally, the implications of this policy and how it's being stood is that there'll be less opportunity for these public goods that Vision West and workplace support provide. Sorry, I realised I've gone over time, so I'll stop.
You're right. So thank you very much for bringing that. Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention, and thank you for coming in. Good on you. No, if we don't.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Righto. Next, we'll hear from Lana and Suli from Monavā, who will talk about the services and supports they provide to Pacific Rainbow communities in Christchurch. Welcome.
Tēnā koutou katoa, warm Pacific greetings, talofa lava. My name is Suli Tuzaupe. I was born and raised here in the happiest city in Aotearoa, maybe in the world. I'm a registered nurse by profession, fitness trainer, been teaching classes for the last 20 years. I did start when I was 5. Recipient of the Christchurch Civic Award 2023. I'm in a Kiwi Bank Local Hero Award, but my passion is Moana Wā, Navigators of Pacific Pride. And I am the founder, chair of this amazing collective where we serve our communities, our Pacific Rainbow, as well as their families.
Talofa lava, kia ora. I'm Lana Shields. I am the operations manager of Moana Wā, Navigators of Pacific Pride. I am a proud mother of a gay daughter who is thriving with her wife and baby. And I am Samoan. Also the niece of a prominent Pacific leader who passed away, also identified as whawhawhine, but not publicly gay. So we first of all would like to thank you for granting us the $20,000 from the Strengthening Communities Fund. This will make a real impact on our community and raising awareness to not only the challenges that we have, but celebrating our uniqueness, our differences, and sending out positive messages. Moana Wā will be 3 years old in February, and we rely totally on grants, sponsorships, and donations. I work full-time as the operations manager, and we contract in social media coordinator and other rangatahi to help us with sending the message and supporting our communities. Also just like to thank the community advisors that have helped us along the way, Abraham, Sina and Viviana.
So why Moana Wā? It was a vision that I had because growing up here in Christchurch didn't have the role models or the support. We found that our communities would go up north or not necessarily feel comfortable to come out. There were 2 experiences of 2 teenagers that had committed suicide, and that was due to not disclosing their rainbow identities outside of their circle of friends. So it was important to have a space, create a space that we were able to come together, but also provide equally an opportunity to thrive as a community. But our point of difference is our families, to support families of our Pacific Rainbow communities, but also welcome all flavours. So our slogan is all flavours welcome.
That's correct. And as far as all flavours welcome, we've recently had 4 Ugandan refugees join us. As you may know, in Uganda it's illegal, and as well as a lot of the Pacific Islands, to be homosexual. So we welcome everyone to our space that we provide is safe, events we have, and with our Pacific values as well, we just pass that on, and most things that we do are very with a positive spin, because we're the happiest city in New Zealand. We just wanted you to know who we were, the faces behind Moana Wā and what we're doing here in Christchurch. And
we've provided an impact report of our workings on the last 3 years. We're here about collaboration. So we work closely with the other rainbow communities within the city, but also nationwide. And we've got a great presence online as well. So we're happy to take any questions.
Yep, any questions? No, we haven't got any questions. Thank you very much for coming in, though. Very good to see you. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Right, we'll now have Mike Norris from the Akaroa Civic Trust, who's here to talk about Akaroa Wastewater Scheme and the Council's resource consent request. Harry. Morning.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors, for making it possible for Harry and myself to present today. I'm representing the Akaroa Civic Trust. I'm also representing the Robinsons Bay Ratepayers Association. Harry's representing the Akaroa Ratepayers and Residents Association, and we're also representing the Friends of Banks Peninsula. So that's a formidable collective of entities on the peninsula, and we feel very strongly about this very hot topic. So imagine this, a wastewater scheme that could deliver potable, near potable water to all the households of Akaroa in the district, a wastewater scheme that could deliver a safe and near potable discharge to the harbour, in the middle harbour, not 100 metres away from Red House as the current scheme is using. 3 years to build and a $30 million price tag. Imagine that. Well, back in 2014, that is what the council promoted, an excellent scheme which everyone supported after much submission, discussion and thought. It was a very well engineered scheme. It was submitted to ECAN for consent. It passed on 2 counts and failed on the 3rd, which was the harbour discharge. So ECAN directed the council to go back to the drawing board and come up with a land-based solution. That's a tough ask for a population the size of Akaroa to be absorbed onto land. So after the decline of the application, we are now faced with a nightmare scenario. A $100 million project, and it's bound to blow out. A gigantic tank farm at Robinsons Bay with 9 tanks and 23 metres in diameter, 9 metres high, the biggest structures on the peninsula. 700 kilometres of irrigation pipe, 2.3 million drippers, irrigating dryland-loving Kānaka on land 37 hectares that you own at Robinsons Bay, which I note you've already started planting in, which you don't have a resource consent for the scheme yet, so maybe we're going to have an unwanted forest in Robinsons Bay. We are going to have raw wastewater overflows into tidal streams and beaches, Robinsons Bay and Children's Bay.
Can I just stop? This laptop is seized up here with the slides. Could the IT person sort it out, please?
Just need an arrow, do we?
No, well, the arrow. Oh, yes, thank you.
Great. So we're page 20. We have a massive terminal pump station adjacent to the recreation ground in Akaroa and on reclaimed land in the tsunami zone. Now look, we're pretty sympathetic to the council's position here. You're in a real bind. You cannot continue the current system operating out of Red House Bay, and we understand that, and we also agree with Ngāi Tahu. It should never have been put there in the first place. Culturally sensitive site of a massacre in 1830. So we totally support having to move it. But there is significant angry public concern about the new proposal. Even our MP, Vanessa Wienink, raised the very issue in Parliament 2 weeks ago, and she highlighted the need to look at whether we're getting value for money and whether cultural insensitivity needs to be re-examined. So we've had community board sessions where council staff have come and they've tried to allay our fears for the system. They've said the best thing we could do would be to fix our own backyard gullies and traps and make sure we're not contributing to inflow and infiltration. We've had 2 significant public meetings, well attended, over capacity, and look, the overwhelming feeling of those meetings was go back to the council and ask them to pause on this crazy scheme, go to Ngāi Tahu and Onuku and hammer out a better outcome. We had massive applause when we put those 2 thoughts to the people. We're in the long-term submission. I've written to you, Mary, when you were Deputy CEO, expressing our concern after the Becker report came out. You very politely replied saying, thank you for your opinion, but we don't agree with you. And so here we are now, slide 25. We don't know what the operating costs of this massive scheme are going to be. But if you work out there's 17 kilometres of pipeline before you get to the 700 kilometres of irrigation pipe, the maintenance alone is going to be horrific. And of course, nobody's mentioned that yet. We feel the council is sidestepping on the route to its consent. It is making piecemeal applications for discharges that are not included in its original application. We want transparency. We want you to tell us what's really going to happen, how many days of the year we're going to have outflows onto the beaches of raw sewage, which is worse than we have at the moment, and we cannot wait for your discharge consents to be applied for. We want transparency and we want sanity. We would urge you to withdraw your application for a consent and rethink the whole thing until it is complete, until you've got devotional included in it. Thank you. I'll take any questions if you want them, or we can leave them till Harry's finished his presentation.
Yeah, you've used up your time, which is fine. If Harry, if you'd like to carry on your...
Yeah, I'm ready to carry on.
Yeah, far away, bud.
Cameron?
Oh, and you're joined by Cameron, is that right?
Yes.
Yep.
So just hit the arrows.
Don't touch the pad.
Most pads. I'm going to talk about a couple of points, then hand over to Cameron Jasper, who's an expert in hydrogeology. The big flaw in this scheme, as I see it, is the assumption about population growth. You've told the consultants that the population growth in Akaroa is going to be 0.32% per annum for the next 30 years. That means in 30 years' time, you get 10% population growth. You need to do a reality check on that. Talk to the trade staff who are busy renovating all those holiday homes into permanent homes. We think population growth is going to be more like 4% per annum, which will be on a par with other towns, Methven, Hamner, Tekapo, for example. That means doubling the population in 20 years' time. When that happens, you won't even cope with 60% of what's coming down the pipes with the wastewater scheme. Mike's talked about the fact that there could be overflows and there could be surface runoff into the harbour, and it's at the top end of the harbour. That's the wrong end of the harbour. I mean, that should be obvious to everybody. Anything like that should be happening at the seaward end of the harbour. And a long discharge pipe was considered earlier on, and it was discounted on cost. It was expensive then. It doesn't look expensive now compared to what you're facing at the moment, and that should be re-looked at. And the other option that is a real possibility for a viable alternative is a variation on managed aquifer recharge. And at this point, I'm going to hand over to Cameron, who has experience in the Akaroa area talking about this, and he will present his ideas on this. Thank you.
Thanks, Harry. Can we go next slide?
No, you do.
Oh, I do it here? Okay,
You do it there.
cool.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll just really quickly try to get through the background, previous MAR options that were looked at. and some injection bore testing results that happened at the current wastewater treatment plant. And then I'll describe our kind of updated MAR option for this with a conceptual overview and some of the current uncertainties and implications. So background, here's the options map. You can see where the treatment plant's located, and you can see kind of where the irrigation scheme is located. And some of the early options looked at was like a wetland at the treatment plant as part of the scheme. There was injection bore testing at the treatment plant up on the top of the hill, which is about 100 meters or 107 meters above the sea level. And then some conceptual options were looked at for the hillside near Akaroa on that dot on the map, and then at the Akaroa foreshore. So previously this looked like a series of injection and recovery wells near the foreshore in Akaroa. So this was done quite a while back, and basically there was risk of injected water emerging from ground for the hillside option, and there's risk of injected water being drawn to community supply bore. So back on this map, you can see the community source protection zones are the for those takes, especially the well in Akaroa. And then the hillside option looked like this, with injection and recovery on the hillside, maybe 20 meters below the proposed wastewater treatment plant. So the injection bore testing at the site, basically the volcanics in Akaroa are a beautiful mess, and the injection bores that were drilled at the treatment plant are some of the worst performing bores in the whole area. Looking at the math on the injection rates compared to existing bores, they perform severely less than existing bores in the area. No fracture zones or, there are no good permeability layers that were encountered for the test bores. So then a little math was done with 20 meters head injection pressure. You get much bigger performance with a bit of head pressure on them. And you can see the test bores done at the treatment plant are still well below all the other bores in the area. So it could have been, partly due to their location on the top of the hill and a bit of, bad luck, really, for those initial tests. And I think what's required is around 2,000 cubic meters a day. And you can see some of these bores would cover maybe a third or half or the full required discharge amount. Our updated MAR option is the Takamatua foreshore, which is shown on the map here. So that's, I think, 100 meters below the current treatment plant, and it's well outside of any sort of community aquifer or source protection zone. So these would be deep injection bores into volcanics. The discharge from the potable or treated wastewater brought to close to or at potable standard would be very indirect and diffuse to harbor. Doesn't necessarily require recovery, and so the implications are for a hybrid scheme with irrigation. It would only reduce requirements for post-treatment buffer storage and pipeline diameter. Otherwise, the geology and permeable zones are very variable in this setting, so you'd still need to do more investigations to verify if that location would work. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. That is very interesting.
Cool.
Thanks for your presentation, and we'll request a staff update on the advice on the points you've raised.
Well, Mr. Mayor, may I just say, yesterday we sent a 29-page presentation, a PowerPoint, which I hope you'll find time to read. Mm-hmm. A lot of work's gone into it. It's carefully researched. It's sound engineering. Anyway, thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you, guys. Good to see you. Thank you. Yeah. And you too, Kim. Yep. Righto. We now have Kim, and I think David's with him. Kim, who will speak about the parking and safety issues related to the redevelopment of the former City Care site near Sydenham Park and Bradford Park.
Hello everyone, it's really nice to see you here today, whereas I normally see you on the CTV site or on Earthquake Day with the other bereaved families. So thank you for your time today. And I'd firstly just like to, I'm not showing, can you just please show the map? rather than you have to look at a whole lot of words, I just requested for the map to be shown today. Thank you. And I'd just firstly like to thank David Lynch for his assistance in helping me with this presentation today. So have you got the other map? I sent a separate map. So it's full screen, so you can actually see the map rather than all the words. There was a separate attachment of just the map. Okay, so I wish to raise concerns about the redevelopment of the former City Care site, which is located there in the red box adjacent to Sydenham Park, and it's 200 metres away from Bradford Park, which you've just zoomed out on the map so you can't see. So zoom back out a little bit, please. My concern is related to both safety and limiting access to parking will deter players from participating in sports, and the congestion will impact residents and visitors from being able to access and park near their home. So both parks are popular sports venues, with Sydenham Park hosting cricket, rugby, hockey and bowls, and at any stage it can have 3 cricket games, outdoor bowls, an indoor cricket training facility at the back, and the AstroTurf all happening on the same day, so hundreds of players and only 26 car parks. And Bradford Park, which is only 200 metres away, has rugby league, rugby and cricket, and has no car park. So both these parks rely on off-street parking. Now on the map, if you look at all the yellow areas, they are yellow dotted lines where no cars can currently park. So existing parking limitations are causing significant congestion in the neighbourhood, and also affecting other businesses, especially on weekends when sports are played and other events such as markets. So the primary issue is Sydenham Park with its only 26 designated car parks relying on street parking, and Bradford Park with no parking at all, relying entirely on street parking. There currently is illegal parking on Milton Street, on the berms, and unwanted parking in the local businesses and the shops on Colombo Street. And on Saturday, it can generate hundreds of additional cars to the neighbourhood parking on the streets to go to these parks. I'm told the Sydenham Rugby Club alone in winter can generate 500 spectators, which is fantastic for them, but people need to be able to access these events. Both the Sydenham Cricket Club and the Sydenham Bowls Club, the presidents have issued letters, which you'll have a copy of those today that you can read. The other primary impact is on the residential development on parking. Now, they're planning on the City Care site, Niwa and 60 to 100 townhouses. Now, that could put further strain on local parking unless you have enough off-street parking for the people that live there, the residents and their visitors. Because you can see Sydenham Park is boxed in by Brougham Street, Milton Street and Colombo Street. The main parking that those people park when they come to sports is on Milton Street, which is right near to that City Care site. And that would be a huge impact if they lose off-street parking in front of that site. And Brougham Street's quite dangerous for people getting out of the car with children on a sports day. It's 4 lanes, it's got trucks going to Littleton, and that poses quite a safety risk for children and their families to have to visit the park. So the third is accessibility concerns, as raised by being gridlocked in there of those 3 roads and the limited parking with the yellow lines and the safety with the tamariki getting off on those roads. And also with Mitre 10, see the big orange box? That's a new Mitre 10 going in. So that's going to add more congestion to the neighbourhood and more parking, and that just needs to be considered when they're rebuilding on the site. The safety concerns has also been raised for ambulance access to Sydenham Park. Now, down the left-hand border of that red City Care box is Johnson Street. That is the only way into Sydenham Park. It is currently very narrow. It's got yellow lines down one side of it. And then once the ambulance goes down there, it has to go through the 26 car parks to get access to the grounds if they need an ambulance on the sports field. That's a safety concern that's been raised by the sports clubs. My recommendation that the CEO instruct and undertake a traffic safety audit on the current parking demands on street parking, and not for the audit to be done on a Monday to Friday, but the audit to be done on a Saturday when people were playing sports at the park. So you can see the reality of how much off-street parking is taken up by the sports players. And when they do the audit, to look at not just the current demands on parking, but the future demands on when Mitre 10's finished, which opens in April, and the bottom box there of shops where the old Mitre 10 was is going to be demolished and I'm told put into housing, and also potentially the Sandridge as well. So taking future developments into consideration. The new site of City Care, I believe, needs to have ample off-street parking to cater for all residents that live there, so they don't take up any on-street parking, and provision for electric vehicles for the future. Considering, I would also believe that with this having these two parks, we should have consideration for a mandatory parking requirement within any development within an X proximity of a sports park, so people can play sports. And I think you could also at this stage allocate some land of that development to the parking, so they've got more than 26 parks. And the evaluation of the development of widening Johnson Street, because you've got all of the land on the right-hand side of it, so that could be possible as well. And that would give more access to ambulance and people accessing the park.
How are we going there, Kim?
Nearly finished.
Yeah, good on you.
The locals have also requested that the rubbish bins be picked up within the development and not having hundreds of rubbish bins on Johnson Street and on Milton Street. And my closing statement is, under the Local Government Act, I respectfully request a written response from the matters I've raised and an indication of what actions that the council intend taking and address the concerns that I've raised. I thank you for your time, and you've got copies of all of this, submissions from the local sports clubs, and also I've been around the community and got feedback from them. So you've got all of that you can read, and the community really thank you, because this can make quite a big difference for our local communities. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Kim, and thank you for the effort to bring this to our attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Okie doke. Next we have Cody Cooper on Zoom. Maybe?
Yep.
Yep, I can hear you, mate. There, good man. Who will speak on item 22, Scruttons Road Rail Crossing, Notice of Motion. Fire away, mate.
Yeah, look, it's difficult for me to reconcile Kiwi Rail's assertion that safety is the priority behind the Heathcote Expressway cycleway closure, especially given their own track record with safety. Peter Reedy, Kiwi Rail CEO, said that he would not like to see anyone walking or cycling across level crossings because he's attended a fatality before. But let us be clear here, while any death on our roads is regrettable, there have been just 2 deaths in 10 years involving cyclists at level crossings. One of those deaths actually happened in Christchurch. A tragic incident at the Pendleton Road crossing led to the death of cyclist Richard Chandler in 2016. The Pendleton Road level crossing had no cycling or pedestrian safety infrastructure in place. The coroner's report recommended automatic pedestrian gates that close when a train approaches. According to subsequent reporting, neither Kiwi Rail, nor NZTA, nor Council responded to or otherwise engaged with the coroner's report. I'm going to presume that that's still true, as even 8 years later at that very intersection where Mr. Chandler unfortunately passed away that day, there have been no safety improvements. No chicane, no half barrier, no gates. The very same death could happen again today or tomorrow in the same place. Yet we've recently upgraded 3 different level crossings north of that location, not the one where someone actually died. How are we prioritising this work? During the past 10 years, 101 cyclists died on our roads. When Kiwi Rail had their safety study done at Heathcote recently, just 3 cyclists cross the railway each day. We're talking about spending $6.5 million. That's just over $2 million per cyclist a day. We could afford to purchase them a literal tank each and still have some cash left over. If Kiwi Rail's stance on the Heathcote Expressway cycleway closure goes unchallenged, in my mind it sets a dangerous precedent not just for other cycleways adjacent to the railway corridor, but also for critical freight movements used by many businesses and pathways used to connect to local communities. I finally received confirmation yesterday around NX Road level crossing. Kiwi Rail's now putting their hand out and asking council to spend around $1 million per year to have a guy stand around 24/7 manually controlling the level crossing. Or the alternative, shut down the NX Road level crossing. Kiwi Rail previously upgraded this level crossing for cars, but opted at that time not to spend the money on the associated pedestrian and cycling infrastructure, instead leaving that cost to council. NX Road interfaces with the Northwest Arc Cycleway, and a design from 2014 for that cycleway, 10 years ago now, actually excluded the railway interface specifically. I can only assume that this has been bubbling away that entire time. So I am concerned that council staff seem to have circumvented proper community engagement process by relying on temporary authority measures. That was evident in the installation of the Park Terrace cycleway, and it's happening again, except this time in reverse with the cycleway being closed. By failing to consult community board staff and neglecting the essential checks and balances to ensure local input and accountability, the community was not told that council staff had agreed with Kiwi Rail that the cycleway would close if funding could not be arranged. Staff have also known about those cost escalations for some time now, around 6 months. This lack of transparency erodes public trust in council and sets a troubling precedent for future projects. Some of you were vocal about this with Park Terrace last time, but silent now. Where is the talk of revoking staff's LOAs in this case? I reject any assertion that this closure will be temporary. We only need to look no further than Hallsville Junction Road realignment, which has been continuing for nearly a decade now. It's cost a ratepayer close to $30 million. Kiwi Rail has no credibility when it comes to forecasting either timeframes or costs, and their safety model fails to account for the increased risk to cyclists and pedestrians who, faced with the closure of that cycleway, may result to unsafe or illegal crossings or be forced onto busy roads. It raises serious questions about their safety model when they deem it unsafe for cyclists to ride alongside, but not through, a crossing, yet consider it acceptable for vehicles to cross the railway at the same location. Council staff have repeatedly emphasised council's responsibility as a local roading authority to ensure public safety and mentioned they're legally required to eliminate hazards such as at Church Corner recently. Forcing cyclists to navigate high traffic areas or contend with heavy trucks due to the closure of the cycleway will significantly increase the actual, not perceived risks to cyclists' own personal safety. Therefore, it's essential that council firmly rejects Kiwi Rail's proposal, not required to, in the document. If Kiwi Rail insists on closing the crossing, any associated risks and costs must rest with them, not the city and its ratepayers. In fact, it's worthwhile noting that Kiwi Rail doesn't even pay rates under Local Government Act. They're literally living rent-free.
All good. Thank you, Cody. That's very clear. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right-ho. Next, I'll welcome Amalia Harris, who is speaking on the same item, but she's from the Heathcote School students. Please.
Kia ora koutou, my name is Amalia Harris and we have come to speak on regarding the potential closure of the Heathcote Expressway. We are a range of students from year 7 to 11 and we attend Heathcote Valley School, Te Aratai College and Hagley College.
Hi, I'm Ali. I'm a year 9 at Te Aratai College.
Hi, I'm Zara and I'm also a year 9 at Te Aratai College.
The bike track is a great way to meet friends at the tannery and go into town.
And it's the best way to get to Te Aratai College because there's no dedicated bus to get there.
How we would be impacted personally. We would need to bike on the highway. Port Hills Road is 60 kilometres, lots of trucks, underpass, and it's scary and dodgy. It's very dangerous crossing the Littleton off-ramp.
Heathcote students would need to go on the footpath, which is more dangerous with cars pulling out and more pedestrian accidents.
There would also be less students biking. Zara and I bike most days to school. We would stop biking altogether.
At Te Aratai, there are around 80 students and teachers that bike to the school.
Biking is the fastest and most efficient way to get to Te Aratai and Hagley.
Hi, I'm Macy and I'm a Year 7 at Heathcote Valley School.
I'm Billy and I'm a Year 9 at Te Arotai College.
We would like to talk about safety. Young people not on Port Hills Road and Chapman's Road have been having parents needing to bike with the kids or young people to ensure safety. It is incredibly hard to pass for people with trucks going fast and being no cycle lane on Chapman's or Port Hills Road. So having the bike trail is easy and way more safe for people to pass through.
To get to school, I use Chapman's Road, and it is far more dangerous than going along the bike path. Scruns Road has 4 signal lights, long viewpoint, and 1 railway line. In contrast, the Chapman's Road has 2 lights, multiple tracks, and it's very hard to see.
Cyclists are far more aware of a train than a car, since they can see and hear a train from a long distance better than a car.
For Scruns Road, people have said that 1 accident in 1,003 years, but we feel we're close to having an accident every second or third ride on Port Hills Road or Bridle Path Road near Ferry Road.
Kia ora, I'm Lena. I'm a Year 11 student at Te Arotai College. The environmental impacts are also important in this decision. If we're not encouraging more people to bike, and we're going to be having more people driving, which is going to create more emissions, and we're not going to be here in 1,003 years to have that 1 accident. It just feels like a backward step. Sustainable transport's important. Christchurch is known as this cycling city in New Zealand, and this just feels like we're kind of just we're going backwards. Yeah.
And finally, the social impacts. I'm Year 10 at Hagley College. A 2018 study shows that it's the best way to travel for your mental health, and as teenage students, this is actually really important for us. Social media is a big impact of mental health issues and is significantly more common than nowadays. And being on a bus, I find if I bus to school, I don't start off the day very well because I'm stuffy. I've been on social media. I don't start off very well. In contrast, if I'm on a bike, I'm able to get straight into my learning and have better outcomes. It's also for people like Zara did not want to bike when she started at Te Arotai College, and now she really loves it. And this is a big mental health impact. It's actually really helped people. It helps people all the time.
You go. We have several alternatives for closing this cycleway, and if you're going to close it, we do need an alternative because the alternative at the moment is very dangerous.
You could put a stop sign in to get people to stop so that they can check if there's a train. You could say it's residents only, cyclists aren't allowed on it. You could say cyclists will be fined if they cross it. You could do so many things. It's not just closing it.
Because the train tracks aren't even going over the cycleway.
And it's such an amazing opportunity that we've had, and it seems such a shame to lose what we've put so much effort into getting. Yeah.
And we'll take any questions now.
No, we've. If I stop, yeah, we're running out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It is quite formidable getting up here and talking to all us lot, but you did a very good job. Thank you. Okay, we have Steve from Heathcote Commuters, also speaking about item 22. Steve.
Tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Steve Harris, but this isn't Steve. This is Bianca Sullivan, who's a Heathcote commuter who's here with me, and I know there's other Heathcote commuters in the audience as well. I'm a resident of Heathcote Valley. I've commuted by bike to work as a doctor at Christchurch Hospital several times every week since I moved here 18 years ago. I ride along the Heathcote Expressway. Prior to its full completion, I would ride along Port Hills Road, then down Chapman's Road, over the railway lines to the Tannery to join the Heathcote Expressway. Having the section from Kenaway Road to Truscott's Road completed last year was amazing. Being able to cycle on a separate route to the heavy trucks that use Port Hills and Chapman's Road is so much safer, more enjoyable, and more relaxing. Having a cycling route that runs parallel to, without crossing, the railway line across Scruttons Road is without a doubt much safer than having to cycle over the level crossing on Chapman's Road, which, as I hope you know, is also without barrier arms and other cycle-specific safety features. As a psychiatrist, I'm interested to see the 2018 American study in transportation research that found that cycling, as was mentioned, is the form of commuting transport most closely tied to personal well-being. There are other studies that review how emotional well-being of commuters may have traffic safety implications itself. While New Zealand census data showed that the number of people commuting via bike to work in Christchurch over the last 5 years increased by 14%, there was actually a 40% increase between February 23 and February 24 along the Woolston end of the Heathcote Expressway, measured by the City Council automatic cycle counters. The increase in numbers of cyclists is very evident when I ride along the Kenaway to Truscott section of the Heathcote Expressway, and it's made up of a very wide range of ages. I believe that closing this section of the Heathcote Expressway to enable KiwiRail to change an adjacent railway crossing actually increases the risk to cyclists who would otherwise have to use the much busier Port Hills and Chapman's Road or Bridle Path and Ferry roads to ride from Heathcote Valley to somewhere closer in town. This is a very real risk for me personally, as I experienced a severe traumatic brain injury a few years ago as a result of a cycling accident, and any further head injuries from cycling accidents would have a devastating impact on me and my family.
Kia ora, Steve. Kia ora koutou, Mayor and Councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. My name's Bianca Sullivan, and I'm an Environmental Planner and Independent Hearing Commissioner. And I just want to say this is the first time I've actually spoken to a council in a personal capacity rather than in a professional capacity, and I hope this goes to emphasise the importance that I place on this issue. I started using a bike to commute at the age of 5 or 6 when I biked to North New Brighton Primary School, and I've continued cycling to high school, university, and now I commute to work on my bike. I'm going to cut this short a little bit, as I don't think I've got enough time. Like most cyclists, I do it for the fresh air and exercise, to feel awake and ready for work in the morning, relaxed and unwound when I get home from work, and also for the cost-saving and environmental benefits. I've lived in Heathcote Valley with my partner and our 2 teenage children for over 10 years, and I originally cycled to work via the Port Hills and Opawa roads, later using Bridle Path Road to connect to the Rapanui Shagrock Cycleway. Port Hills Road and Bridle Path roads are, in my view, dangerous places to ride a bike. So I was excited when the Heathcote Expressway opened in late 2023. I commute to work on this cycleway up to 5 days a week. Sometimes I also use it in the weekends. And here's just some observations of its use. So kids of all ages use it to commute to school, as you've heard this morning. And there's also kids independently riding outside of school as well. My own children use it to commute to the tannery or town with their friends. There are regulars who park their cars in Heathcote and use the cycleway to cycle to work. As those of you who cycle will know, cyclists talk to each other. Many of these are from settlements in Littleton Harbour, but also the hill suburbs further east. So they drive, park, and then use the safe cycleway to cycle into town. Groups of older, high-vis wearing e-bikers are common, often cycling to one of the 2 cafes in Heathcote. I regularly see parents with children learning to ride a bike. And I see the same walkers and runners, many who seem to do a loop from the northwest side of Heathcote to Ferrymead Park and back via Port Hills Road. It's not just a cycleway. At all times of the day, I see cyclists, runners and walkers coexisting on the cycleway. On a bike, you're more aware of your surroundings compared to being in a car. And I'd like to say that you can hear the trains coming quite literally from a mile away. The key hazards on the cycleway are the pukeko, who congregate on the path under the motorway bridge, the occasional out-of-control dog, and the groups of e-bikers I mentioned who take up the width of the cycleway and are too busy talking to see cyclists coming the other way. I feel comfortable managing these risks. I've lived in several Christchurch suburbs, and even prior to the City Council's cycleway network, have always been able to work out a bike route to the city that doesn't involve busy roads or dangerous intersections. Heathcote is the exception to this, with no safe route out of the valley without the cycleway. Will I keep cycling if the cycleway is temporarily closed? Yes, I will, but I'll be doing so knowing that there's a higher risk of injury or worse. I suspect many of the cyclists I regularly see on the cycleway won't take this risk and will stop cycling. And that's referring to Steve's 40% increase in our area. I ask that you let common sense prevail and find an alternative to temporarily closing the cycleway. I don't understand the complexities of the situation, but there must be a way to allow the cycleway to remain open until any upgrade works to the railway crossing can be undertaken. Please don't remove the safe option that we've waited so long for.
Thank you very much for coming in. That's good. You've used up all the time, but that's great. Brilliant. Okie dokie. We now have Spokes Canterbury, which is Anne and Fee, also talking about Scrattons Road.
Which one's going to move me? Okay. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Fee Bennett's tōkunga, and this is Anne Scott. Let me begin by giving a tōtoko to Cody Cooper, the Heathcote school students and the Heathcote commuters who spoke before us. As Cody mentioned, the risk to cyclists and walkers is minimal at this level crossing due to very few currently accessing the cycleway by crossing the railway. Other level crossings, as Cody alluded to, are much more dangerous, but let me not dwell on those. More mitigation can be done to raise awareness of the level crossing. The signs that ask cyclists to dismount don't tell you why. If you tell people why, then they'll know. But as alluded to by the previous speakers, we can hear and we can see a lot better than people inside a metal box. If you do close the cycleway, a temporary cycleway will be needed on all the roads used as a detour instead of the cycleway. That'll cost a lot more money and infuriate a lot more drivers. So please do everything you can to keep the cycleway open.
I think we need to look holistically about safety and think about, actually, this is the safest way for cyclists. The alternatives are really unsafe. And as one of those high-vis e-bike retired people who go down the cycleway and enjoy the facilities around our neighbourhoods, I'd like to say that actually you need to be pragmatic about this. One accident in 1,000 years is a really poor way of deciding what the level of safety is. And I think that I think that we need to listen to the community. This is an important cycleway, not just for the Wednesday wheelies, but actually more important for those who are young people who need a safe way to get to school, and for people who need to get to the local destinations around this area. Thank you.
Thank you. We're happy to take questions.
Okay, yes, we have got time for some questions. Yanni, please.
Thank you. And look, I really appreciate the interest you're showing in this issue. I was just keen to know if you've made contact or tried to approach KiwiRail, who are driving this decision, and it's still a little bit ambiguous, I think, about whether council actually could make the decision or not, or whether we had to because of KiwiRail. So I'm just kind of interested if the groups, if you're looking at who in KiwiRail you need to talk to kind of give them the same message that you're giving us, given that they're the ones that have largely driven this, not us. I think just about all of us around this table are horrified at what's happened and want to find a way to get through it.
We have been talking about approaching KiwiRail, but we wanted to actually hear more from everybody first before we actually do that. We have actually approached KiwiRail in the past and had very little feedback from them. Don, you might know, he was the chair of Spokes for a long time, spent quite a bit of time trying to talk to them about the Northern Line cycleway and the Herwood Road crossing. They're very, very difficult to deal with. So I think your comment will spur us to have another go. And we'll see. But what we don't understand is actually the context, because the cycleway doesn't go over the railway line. So we don't understand why this is a decision of KiwiRail.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe are staff able to give a presentation while we've got the submitters in the room today on this report? Or
No time.
Right,
No.
Okay,
Mark.
Anyway,
please.
thank you for...
Yeah, well done, Mark.
Yeah, and would you be interested in catching up offline out of the meeting here to get some contact details for some of the KiwiRail people?
Yes, please. Yes, definitely.
Okay, thank you very much for coming in. It's good to see you both. Thank you. Okay, now we've got a addition. We've got Thomas, who is going to talk about the same issue.
So I'm a local resident of Heathcote Valley, and I only found out about it yesterday, so that's why it's late. I'm not a big fan of cycleways on most of the roads, but I will say this was a great idea on the council. The cycleway has improved massive things. It's helped the flow into and out of. It is one of the greatest things of having been in Heathcote, that you can just drive in. I can tell you, going down Chapman's Road at 9 o'clock at night on a wee scooter, I've actually been, in the last month or two, I've had one of the trucks almost run me off the road. There are a lot of them actually speed. They go way over the speed limit, over 60 k's. So it is incredibly dangerous. I also, the year before the earthquake, I was a victim of being hit by a vehicle around the power roundabouts. I have a lump on the back of my ear because of that. I have 3 hours memory loss. So I know what it's like being on the road. I can assure you that would be one of the minor problems driving down Port Hills Road, because you've got all the trucks coming in, you've got all the cars coming in, and most of them are speeding. They go way over the speed limit, and it is a really, really dangerous intersection. The other thing is, practically the fact is, I drive down Brown Street on a regular basis. As I've pointed out to Sarah Templeton, you have giant poplar trees down there, and one of those poplar trees are currently fallen over and has been hung up on the trees with ivy growing over it. It is a greater risk than the cycle track right now. And for a practical effort, it's not going to cost millions of dollars. All you have to do is fold down gates when the train comes along. That would cover all the safety risks, period, and it'd only be $100 to $1,000. That's if you want to ask any more questions.
Yeah, no problem. Anyone like to? No, thank you very much for coming in and making your point. That's brilliant. Okie doke. Right. Deputations by appointment. We have no deputations or petitions today. So we'll move on to confirmation of minutes, which is going to be moved by myself. This is for